She has the kind of beauty that makes people pause without knowing why. When she walks into a room, conversations soften, eyes turn, and time seems to slow down. Everyone notices the glow, but no one ever stops to wonder about the weight behind it. They see admiration, she feels expectation. They see confidence, she feels pressure. They see perfection, she feels emptiness. Because beauty isn't the blessing people imagine. It's a mirror that reflects how the world treats you, not who you truly are. From the moment she was old enough to be noticed, people told her who she was supposed to be. Pretty, charming, desired, but rarely understood. Every compliment became a kind of currency. Every glance, a test of worth. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her identity began to depend on how others reacted to her. The silence between the compliments started to feel unbearable. The attention that once felt flattering began to feel hollow. And the question she never dared to say out loud grew louder inside her. If I stop being beautiful, will anyone still see me? Behind the flawless selfies and perfect smiles is a woman who wakes up at 2 in the morning, scrolling through old messages, wondering why she still feels invisible in a world that constantly looks at her. She's surrounded by people, yet starving for connection. She has admirers, but no one who truly listens. She's praised for her looks, yet no one notices her loneliness. This isn't a story about beauty. It's about what happens when beauty becomes the only language you're allowed to speak. When curiosity, warmth, and innocence, the parts that once made you human, get replaced by performance. Because the more the world adores her image, the further she drifts from herself. And that's the quiet tragedy behind the glow. The reality that so many beautiful women live every day, loved by everyone but known by no one. On the surface, she looks like she's winning at life. Her pictures look perfect, her smile effortless, her confidence untouchable. Every post gets flooded with hearts and fire emojis. Everyone says she's lucky, but no one ever asks if she's happy. Because what they don't see is the constant balancing act happening inside her mind. She's learned to wear happiness like makeup, carefully applied, flawlessly maintained, and easily wiped off when no one's watching. She wakes up every day performing the same unspoken ritual. Be charming, stay desirable, never let them see the cracks. But beauty, when turned into expectation, becomes a silent cage. The same world that praises her also demands perfection. The same people who adore her appearance are the ones who criticize her the moment she falters. She's trapped in a cycle, needing validation to feel seen, and resenting the same validation for making her feel fake. She pretends she's fine, but she scrolls through her phone late at night, reading conversations that once felt real, wondering why they all ended the same way, with her being admired but never truly understood. She's tired of men who fall in love with her image and disappear when they realize she's human. She's tired of friends who see her as competition instead of connection, and she's tired of pretending that attention feels like affection. What no one realizes is that her confidence isn't natural, it's armor. Armor she built after years of being noticed for everything outside her and ignored for everything inside. She learned early that the world listens louder when she looks perfect, so she became perfect, even if it meant losing herself in the process. But the cost of perfection is peace. She can't relax. She can't slow down. Because in her mind, slowing down means fading away. And fading away, to someone who's only ever been valued for her beauty, feels like dying. Modern culture only makes it worse. Social media turned comparison into a daily competition. Filters turned faces into brands. And somewhere along the way, authenticity became rebellion. She can't post her real feelings because vulnerability doesn't get likes. She can't talk about her pain because beautiful people aren't supposed to struggle. So she hides it. She laughs louder when she feels empty. She posts more often when she feels unseen. And she tells herself she's okay, even when her reflection starts feeling like a stranger. But deep down, she knows the truth. Her entire sense of worth has been outsourced. Every compliment gives her a 5-second high, then leaves her craving the next one. It's not confidence. It's dependence disguised as confidence. It's not empowerment. It's exhaustion dressed as pride. This is the real conflict. She doesn't hate her beauty. She hates that it became the only thing people value. She doesn't hate being admired. She hates that admiration feels empty. And she doesn't hate the attention. She hates that without it, she feels invisible. What nobody sees is that behind the flawless photo is a woman quietly breaking under the pressure to stay perfect. She's not chasing attention anymore. She's chasing herself. The version of her that existed before the validation, before the followers, before the applause. The version that laughed freely, loved deeply, and didn't need to prove her worth through a lens, because the world made her believe that beauty would make her loved. But what it really made her was lonely. This isn't just a story about beauty. It's a story about what happens when attention replaces affection, when love becomes something you earn instead of something you feel safe in. When a woman grows up constantly praised for how she looks, the brain learns a dangerous equation. Being seen equals being safe. Every smile, every compliment, every approving glance feels like oxygen, and just like oxygen, she starts to panic the moment it's gone. That's how the emptiness begins, not as sadness, but as silence. A silence between the compliments, a silence between the posts, a silence that whispers, if they stop looking, do I still exist? She may not remember when it started, but her body does. Maybe it was the teacher who praised her beauty more than her effort. Maybe it was a parent who lit up only when she looked presentable. Or maybe it was the way the world rewarded her charm long before it rewarded her truth. That early attention felt like comfort. But comfort borrowed from reactions is comfort that can be taken away. So the nervous system began to adapt. Stay beautiful, stay noticed, stay safe. Years later, that same pattern shows up in the smallest moments. The anxiety when a message goes unanswered, the restless scrolling when engagement drops, the sudden ache when a crowd goes quiet. She doesn't just feel unseen, she feels unsafe. Because in her wiring, attention isn't approval, it's survival. And like any survival pattern, it becomes addictive. Each like, each text, each glance is a hit of dopamine, a spark of belonging that fades before it satisfies. The high never lasts long enough, so she keeps reaching. Compliments become calories. They fill, but they never nourish. She begins to realize that being desired isn't the same as being loved. But by then it's already too late. The world only rewards one version of her. So she keeps performing the role she never applied for, the desirable woman. It's a full-time job with no rest days. Her smile is part of the uniform. Her silence is part of the professionalism. Her boundaries, not included in the contract. When you spend years being admired for your image, it becomes impossible not to confuse your reflection with your identity. She starts editing her personality the same way she edits her photos, trimming the edges, filtering the flaws, hiding the real light. The world loves that version of her, so she keeps giving it. But each time she hides a part of herself, her anger, her softness, her clumsy laughter, she loses something real. And what's left behind is empty. Because beauty that's performed isn't self-expression, it's self-erasure. She doesn't show up to be known anymore, she shows up to be maintained. Social media only makes the wound louder. It's a mirror that never turns off, a scoreboard for self-worth. Every scroll reminds her of someone younger, prettier, more followed. And that constant comparison isn't vanity, it's survival accounting. Am I still enough? Becomes the daily question that decides whether she sleeps peacefully or stays awake, refreshing her feed. The tragedy is, when she tries to talk about it, nobody believes her. You're beautiful. What do you have to complain about? And so she stops explaining. Pain without permission becomes shame. She carries it quietly, smiling harder, posting brighter, trying to prove she's fine. But inside, she's split in two. Half of her still wants real connection, to be loved for her soul, her humour, her humanity. The other half has learned that being loved for those things is slow, uncertain, and risky, while being desired for her beauty is instant and guaranteed. That's where the psychological dissonance begins, the tug-of-war between authenticity and approval. She wants to be chosen for her truth, but she's rewarded for her performance. She wants peace, but she's addicted to chaos. She wants to be seen, but she keeps feeding what's only lookable, so she lives in contradiction, craving closeness but fearing vulnerability, chasing connection while running from it. In relationships, this dissonance shows up like a loop. Prove you love me, but don't get too close. I need you, but I can't trust you. Partners get confused. She ends up alone and tells herself that maybe love just isn't real anymore. The worst part is, her nervous system has started to mistake anxiety for attraction. Uncertainty feels like chemistry. Calm feels boring. Safety feels unfamiliar. So she keeps falling for emotionally distant people, because that distance mirrors the earliest pattern of love she knew: inconsistent, conditional, unpredictable. Every time she earns affection from someone hard to reach, it feels like winning something sacred. But when that affection fades, the crash is brutal, and every crash deepens the belief that she is the problem. This is how emptiness becomes a habit. To cope, she learns to self-medicate with attention. Whenever the anxiety rises, she posts something new. Another photo, another story, another piece of her soul dressed as confidence. And for a brief moment, the likes pour in and the pain quiets. But then it fades, faster each time. The brain learns the pattern. Emptiness, attention, relief, emptiness again. Not vanity, just survival. She also begins to test the people closest to her, pulling away just to see if they'll follow, delaying replies to check if they'll wait. But every test meant to prove love only pushes love further away. She ends up confirming her deepest fear. People always leave. So she builds walls. She polishes her life until it gleams. Flawless, curated, unreachable. But perfection is just control in disguise. And control is just fear pretending to be confidence. Over time, she forgets what she even likes anymore. Every decision is filtered through one silent question. Will they approve? She consults her mirror before her heart. She listens to numbers more than feelings. Her preferences fade. Her joy fades, and so does her sense of self. That's when the exhaustion hits, because the performance never ends, not even in private. Her mind keeps rehearsing even when the curtain's down, and that quiet exhaustion eventually turns into emotional burnout. This is why so many beautiful women feel so deeply tired, not physically, but spiritually. Because living for approval is like trying to breathe through a mask. You get just enough air to survive, never enough to feel alive. And here's the cruelest irony. The more the world admires her, the lonelier she becomes. She's surrounded by attention but starved for understanding. Praised for her looks but never noticed for her pain. She's everywhere, yet she feels invisible. Every night she scrolls through her own pictures, wondering why the woman everyone loves doesn't feel like her anymore. And when she finally puts the phone down, she's left with a quiet truth most people never hear themselves admit. I'm loved by the world, but I don't feel loved by anyone. The emptiness then isn't weakness, it's honesty. It's her soul asking for something real, something that can't be captured in a frame or counted in hearts. Because beauty was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be an expression of joy, of individuality, of self. But somewhere along the way, she stopped expressing and started surviving. Her emptiness isn't a flaw, it's a signal, a compass pointing her back to the parts of herself she's abandoned. And the moment she learns to stop performing and start feeling again, she'll discover that what she's been calling emptiness was simply the space waiting to be filled with truth. There comes a time when pretending simply stops working. The smile no longer lands the same way, the compliments don't linger, and the thrill of being admired fades faster than ever before. That's when she begins to understand that the emptiness she feels isn't caused by being unseen. It's caused by no longer seeing herself. It rarely happens in some dramatic collapse. Usually it begins quietly, in the stillness that follows another late-night scroll. She catches her reflection, not to adjust her hair or perfect her makeup, but just to look. And for the first time in a long while, she doesn't recognize the woman staring back. The face is flawless, but the eyes tell another story. They carry the fatigue of someone who has spent years holding herself together. In that moment, she realizes she has built an entire life around what others expected of her. Admirable, composed, desirable, yet somehow lost the part of her that once felt alive. Survival has become heavier than loneliness. For once, she doesn't reach for her phone or chase a new distraction. She lets the silence stay. At first, it feels strange, almost threatening. But then within that quiet, she begins to hear something faint. Her own voice. It's soft and hesitant, like someone speaking, after years of being ignored. It whispers that she doesn't have to keep proving her worth, that she's allowed to rest. The tears don't come immediately. When they finally do, they move slowly, almost unsure if they have permission. For someone who has lived her life being seen, allowing herself to be vulnerable feels almost dangerous. But she begins to understand that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's truth without a disguise. She notices how she has kept herself busy just to avoid hearing her thoughts, how every moment was filled with noise so she wouldn't have to face the quiet. Gradually she starts unlearning, gently, without ceremony. She stops chasing people who only love the highlight reel. She eats without the phone beside her. She laughs without wondering if anyone's watching. Little by little, she sees that her worth never depended on their eyes. It always lived in her choices. As she stops performing, she starts feeling again. It's messy at first. Waves of regret, sadness, and grief for the years she spent being a brand instead of a person. But beneath all that pain, something steady begins to grow. Peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on admiration or control, but the kind that arrives when you finally stop fighting yourself. She learns that beauty is never true power when used to impress. It becomes powerful only when it expresses who she really is. Honest beauty turns into grace, and that grace remains long after the attention fades. Her inner dialogue changes. She stops saying, "I'm not enough," and instead thinks, "I'm still learning." She no longer complains that no one sees her, she simply begins to see herself. For the first time in years, her reflection feels familiar again. Not because she looks better, but because she feels real. The need for chaos fades. She stops confusing pain with passion and finally allows herself to receive love instead of performing for it. One evening, she passes a mirror and catches her reflection by accident. No makeup, no pose, no need to impress. Just her, soft, calm, alive. She smiles, not the rehearsed one, but the kind that begins quietly and grows into gratitude. She realizes she no longer seeks love as she once did. The grand gestures and fireworks have lost their appeal. What she wants now is gentler, a life that feels calm, a love that feels safe, a truth that feels honest. Peace has become her new language. Yet peace is confronting because it doesn't distract. It introduces you to yourself. It forces you to sit with the parts you avoided and forgive the years spent believing you were only worth what others approved. In that discovery, she learns that she can exist without being observed. Silence no longer means invisibility, it means safety. Solitude no longer feels like punishment, it feels like healing. And perhaps, she thinks, real beauty has never been about appearance at all, but about the way a woman finally chooses to see herself. That understanding doesn't make her life perfect, but it makes it peaceful. And for someone who has lived her whole life trying to be adored, peace feels like freedom. She begins to live differently now, not louder, but lighter. She doesn't seek attention, she seeks presence. She no longer acts to prove her worth. She moves in ways that honor it. Slowly, the emptiness begins to dissolve, not because she fills it with people or praise, but because she no longer fears the space itself. She sits with it, listens to it, learns from it, and she finally understands. The emptiness was never her enemy. It was an invitation, one that had been waiting all along for her to come home to herself. In the end, the world still sees her the same way, beautiful, graceful, admired. But now she sees something different. She knows that behind every compliment, every glance, and every photo lies a truth she finally understands. Beauty was never meant to be her purpose. It was only ever meant to be her reflection. She has learned that being loved by everyone means very little if she cannot love the person she is when the lights go out. That's where her peace lives now. Not in validation, not in perfection, but in presence. The woman who once needed to be adored to feel alive has discovered a gentler kind of strength. The kind that doesn't demand attention to exist. She no longer needs to be the center of every room. She's become the calm that fills it. Some days the old habits whisper back. The temptation to perform, to post, to please. It still appears like a familiar ghost. But now she knows how to pause, breathe, and listen. She no longer runs from silence, she walks with it. Because silence is no longer the absence of love. It's the space where love begins. She looks in the mirror now and doesn't see an image to perfect. She sees a woman who survived the pressure of being perfect. She sees someone who learned how to build peace instead of chasing applause. And for the first time, that reflection feels like home. This story was never just about beauty. It was about awakening, about the quiet moment when a woman stops trying to be chosen and chooses herself instead. The moment she realizes that real confidence doesn't shout, it breathes. That real love doesn't take her away from herself, it brings her closer. Because what she was searching for all along wasn't attention, it was belonging, and belonging begins within. Now, when she walks through the world, she still shines. But it's not the light of performance anymore, it's the light of peace. A softer glow that says, I am enough, even when no one's watching. And maybe that's what true beauty really is. Not how perfectly she's seen, but how gently she finally sees herself. If this felt too real, share it with someone who hides their pain behind a smile. Someone who deserves to know that peace is still possible, even after years of pretending. Because sometimes, healing begins with a single realization. You don't have to be adored to be whole. You just have to come home to yourself.